Welcome to Fireside Chats. In today's episode, we're excited to be joined by the father-son duo Ian and Michael Brock for a conversation titled Like Father, Like Son. This episode focuses on the power of father figures and how Michael has played a pivotal role in helping shape Ian into the powerful young man he is today. A special thanks to our sponsor, Dove Men Plus Care, the leading men's grooming brand that believes care changes everything. All right, look, we are back here, the WayMaker Men Summit podcast, the #1 men's empowerment summit in the country. And we got our good friend Ian Michael Brock. We got Father Brock. Ian's been with us for, it feels like, since we started. It's been, you said 2019? 2019. And a lot has changed since then, yeah?
Yes. Whew. A lot? I think that's an understatement. Yeah. Everything has changed and gotten better.
Yeah, I mean, we started this thing with a dream and an idea from Lewis Carr that's just turned into this thing. And you being a big part of it, especially with the Teen Summit group that has been, sort of growing every year. This year is amazing. How many people do you think we have this year?
Over 750 teens.
And we started at what?
Less than 50.
That is a crazy town. That's crazy town. So you have something new this time. You talk about New Nerd Publishing in this new book that you are promoting, that you wrote.
Yes, sir. So we wrote the book on financial literacy called New Nerd Money, and the whole goal of it is how can we educate students with the financial literacy skills that they need to be successful. My whole mindset, or my whole entire life, Father Brock, my mom, they taught me about financial literacy from making me do those flashcards on like assets, liabilities, income, expenses. And so I learned about credit when I was 13, learned about real estate when I was 13, even stocks and crypto when I was 16, 17. And so like when I was 16 years old, I made $50,000 in less than 3 months during the pandemic because of the work I was doing. Right. But my thing is, in the education system, how is it that we expect kids to go to college and take on tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, yet they don't have the skills to manage it as well as to make money, grow it, and be able to take care of their families for generations. So my whole goal was to just be, I'm not a financial expert at all. Right. I just spoke on the things that I did myself, researched, found that worked and didn't work, and put it in the voice of a kid in a way that everyone would be able to understand.
That's awesome. So this book should be a resource that they share in schools.
Absolutely.
I think growing up, if they spent more time with young folks growing up on financial literacy and teaching some of these skills, we would be in a better position.
And that's what we're working on now. So I've gone into different schools in New York City as well as LAUSD and Chicago. We've taught kids in middle school and high school on financial literacy. And actually, after this podcast in a couple of weeks, I'm flying down to the University of Tulsa to teach financial literacy to the men's basketball team there. Wow. And so we're working on trying to do that at different universities too, potentially Howard, potentially Baylor, USC, maybe even UCLA. So it's a lot of things going on, but it's all an amazing opportunity because I feel like if we can equip our people with the necessary skills in financial literacy, the sky's the limit with what we can do.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned Father Brock, and sir, growing as he was growing up, and when you thought about how you wanted to approach this, being a father figure and setting an example for what you would expect from your young man, what made you do the things that you do? What was it in your life that made you think, when I have a son, I'm going to do this?
I think for me, it was more so looking at how I approach encounters with people. I believe people teach you one of two things, either what to do or what not to do. So looking at my life growing up, I kind of examined what were the things that I think were missing, what were the things that were good, and how can you pull from both of those, learn the necessary lessons, and then convey those lessons to your kids, to your son. And so my wife and I, working together, kind of talked about the things that we thought he needed. I didn't get personal development lessons growing up. We knew that he needed those from the very start. Although I took martial arts growing up, I didn't get the lessons behind it, the philosophical lessons behind it. He got both of those. He and his sister got both of those. So it was a matter of looking at my life as an adult and thinking back, what are the things that I missed? Financial literacy was critical. We never had a conversation in my house about credit. We never had a conversation about checking account. I learned about writing the check when I got to college, and many other students that came to FAMU that year also learned those same lessons, many times the hard way. So when I thought about the kids, these are lessons that they need to learn right now. Just imagine if in 8th grade we had started learning about credit, savings, taxes, insurance, all of these things that are absolutely necessary to allow us to have generational wealth. I think back to our conversations about the difference between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, and how both of them were wealthy families, but one excelled because they understood how to leverage insurance, right, and the other did not because they didn't know financial literacy. One understood it, the other didn't. So as we thought about that, it's like these kids have to have this information right now. So when Ian came up with the idea for the book, that's going to be a dynamite book because it takes the adults out of the equation and it allows kids to have a very real dialogue with one another in a language that they can understand so that these concepts are that much more easily digestible.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about the process of writing the book, but I do want to ask you one other question first, which is, how important is it, in your mind, for there to be a proper father figure? I mean, a lot of what we deal with, and especially with our community, is a lack of a proper father figure to guide, to give these lessons, to set a plan and a path, and then go through it with your child, your son in this case.
Oh, that's absolutely necessary. Ian talks about my relationship or his grandfather in the book and the difference between his paternal and maternal grandfathers. My father was in my life, but he was in and out of my life. See, my father was a U.S. veteran. When he left the military, he started driving a truck for a living. And during that time when he wanted to start his own trucking business, this is late 60s, early 70s, very difficult for a black man to get a loan in America. Being discouraged with that, he turned to drug sales, became a drug dealer, and soon after that became a heroin addict. So my life as a kid, my memories, 5, 6, 7, were visiting my father in the penitentiary, dealing with having a heroin addict in the household. So again, as I said earlier, thinking about the things that you can take away from relationships, the good and the bad. So all of those things that I saw that were lacking in my relationship with my father, I wanted to make sure that those things were definitely in place with my son. Primarily a father being there to not only talk, but to lead by example, to show him those things that are necessary. So as a kid, I really rebelled against that notion. My father and I really, we butted heads. When I tell the story of me going to college, I tell people I was running away from home, running away from that situation. But now as an adult with my own kids and I look back, I appreciate those times because they taught me some invaluable lessons about life that I never could have learned in any other setting except for that. And I think my children are better for that lesson. I had to go through that hard work of dealing with that lesson so that they could benefit from it moving forward.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I've been saying lately, one of my new catchphrases is sometimes you trip over a hurdle and fall into an opportunity.
Oh, perfectly said. Yes.
If you don't struggle through some things, you don't really grow and develop those.
Yes, that's
but
what
at the same time, you also want to try to clear the path for your children so that they don't have to go through some of those same hurdles.
Exactly.
Right? So it's a healthy balance, and it's a hard. It's not written anywhere. There's no journals on how to do this as a father.
Yes.
But it's great to see someone like you, a father figure, standing up and sort of being there and taking part in your son's life. So getting to that, son, let's talk about the process of writing this book. So a lot of people don't understand what that is like, and you have said that you are a speaker, not necessarily.
Right. Yeah, it was a difficult process for me because my dad's a writer. He's a writer by nature. In fact, when I was young, my dad used to write my speeches, and so I started taking that over myself. But me, I'm an analytical thinker. I'm thinking about numbers, so I'm always thinking, what are the numbers? But I can also use my voice to speak. I like talking to people. I love having conversations. And so it was difficult for me because I had to take the things that I usually say out loud to people and put it on paper in a way people could understand it. And if you know, talking and writing, two totally different animals. It's not the same thing at all. So at first, I didn't think I was worthy of writing a book. I'm going to be honest with you. I was at that time, 17, 18 years old. So I'm thinking, I'm only 17, 18 years old. What do I have to say? But then my dad was like, no, you need to write this book. You need to write it on financial literacy. I didn't taught you all this. You didn't went through all these different experiences. Right. But then also one of my mentors, Dr. Dennis McKeezy of OSG, he was like, Ian, you're missing so many different opportunities because not only will you be able to speak in front of more people, maybe even make more money, but also you'll be able to impact more lives with the information that you have. And so it's selfish of you to not write this book. So when I heard that, my dad, him, and a bunch of other people, we took on the journey. I wrote I just like sat down and wrote it while I was in Vegas at my grandfather's house. It took me about 2 weeks, flushed it all out, and then began the editing process. But I will say this was by far the hardest thing I've done mentally because it goes against who I am or what I naturally am good at. But I mean, I feel fulfilled. Like when I first got that hardcover book, I mean, this thing right here, holding this thing, I was like, man, I really wrote a good, decent looking book. Right. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's the best book on planet Earth, but I think it's pretty good. So, and the lives, I mean, I've already had people say, wow, I've never read a book that was broken down in such a simple way. And so now it's just how can we get this information into as many kids' hands as possible?
Yeah, listen, I can totally relate. I actually am a new author myself. I wrote a book called
Congratulations.
Behind the Curtain.
Okay.
And the process of writing is so personal, first of all, because, you know, just seeing your words on a page, and then the going from step one into completion is an amazingly fulfilling process.
Absolutely.
As much as it was hard, just getting to it, and to your point, when that package comes, you open up, you pull out your book that you wrote, and it's a physical thing, versus even in your mind when you finish, it's different. But when you're holding that book in your hand, you're like, bro, I did this. Whether it's a thick book, a thin book, or whatever. Yeah. You started the steps, you finished the process, and that's a lesson within itself. Yeah, just getting something from an idea to completion is an accomplishment within itself. Do you feel like now that you've completed your first book, that you have more stuff that you may want to do another book later? Is that on the horizon?
There's definitely more, because as we've gotten words from different parents and different students, but they're like, what's the next step? Because like you teach the beginning basics of making money, managing it, talk about credit and stocks, but like, what are the next steps to get me started? And so I didn't want to do all that in this book. This would have been a 500-page book, and nobody's reading that. But I think the next edition of this is going more in depth on, okay, how to get started, what to do once you get to a certain point. And in different other books, the whole book journey all started with me interviewing highly successful people. Right. I was supposed to write a book on success for kids, and I interviewed people like Oprah Winfrey, Steve Harvey, the former CEO of Chick-fil-A, even Mr. Bob Johnson, but it evolved into something like this. Right. So eventually what I want to do is take that book, the research that we did with the other book, and combine it into the stories that I've learned from this book as well in the future. So there are a bunch of book ideas, but I just want to make sure we get this one done right and get into the hands of as many as we can first.
I got to get an autographed copy of that for my son.
Yes, sir.
Who's at Howard now. So listen, I appreciate you. I know it's a lot more to come. Looking forward to the Teen Summit here at the WayMaker Men's Summit.
Yes, sir.
Men's Empowerment Summit in the country.
Absolutely.
And look forward to continued partnership with you as we continue to grow this, and much success, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And Father Brock.
Yes, Father Brock.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you do, brother.
Shout out to my parents and God, because without them, I wouldn't be here.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely.